Boom. Okay. Good evening, everybody. As we begin, what I guess is actually New Year's Eve, Jewish New Year's Eve. So I hope everybody here has exciting plans for Jewish New Year's Eve. What time does the ball drop? Exactly. I'm not exactly sure.
Tomorrow night at
Yeah,
7:15.
I don't think Old Lang Syne is exactly what we're supposed to be doing tonight, but it is, as it's our last day of the year. It's really a last chance. It's the last opportunity to get things right, to have one 24-hour period to try to not get into so many fights. This is usually a very stressful 24-hour period for us. For us, like rabbi stuff, Rosh Hashanah, got to prepare everything, got to get everything done. So this is always a challenge. These
I've got
24 hours.
nothing to do.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, but you handle everything beautifully and like completely calmly. I'm the one with the issues, and so it's a difficult time, but it's an opportune time because it's the last actual opportunity that we have to make good of Tafshin Pei Aleph, right? So all of the promises we made ourselves and all the things we said we were going to do, this is our chance. So it's not nothing, as we're going to discuss tonight. It's not nothing to make the most out of these days, okay, or this day, these hours. Do the best that we can because that's the best we can do. It's been a long time since we had it on the couch. It's been since before the summer, like Shavuos time. It's been a long time. And what's even crazier is we're not actually on a couch now. I see some of you are on a couch, but we're not on a couch, which is, it's okay. It's okay. It happens to be a little bit more comfortable to do this not on a couch.
Like, really? I feel like the couch is better.
If a couch, like you're sitting awkward, I don't know. It's difficult. Well, we're gonna see, but maybe next time we'll go back to the couch just for truth in advertising, because otherwise I feel it would be wrong.
You didn't have to say. They could have thought we were on a couch.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would have thought we're on a couch. They have a couch in his office. That's a nice place to have a couch. I'm not sure. Okay, so welcome tonight. And tonight I figured what we would talk about is something which is supposed to be, at least, on everybody's mind. Come Rosh Hashanah, come Yom Kippur, brand new year, brand new opportunity for new resolutions. And as we all know about resolutions, not so much. Resolutions don't work so well.
Well, we're going to talk about that. They can work.
They can work. Okay, so maybe you have resolutions that work well. I have resolutions that don't work so well.
No, it's not necessarily me that has made them work, but I believe there are ways to make them work.
There are ways. Okay, so fine. So we'll get to that in a second. But I figured let me do some background as to what is the expectation. Because when we think about change in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it could be that because Yom Kippur is so overwhelming. Should I do the plug for people to turn on the cameras?
I was just thinking that.
Should I do that?
We have two cameras on.
We have two cameras on.
Shout out to the two cameras, but we'd love to see more faces.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is we see more people on Shabbos these days. There are more people in shul.
Therefore, everyone should feel so comfortable putting their cameras on.
Because we know what you look like.
We haven't forgotten.
We know that you haven't shaved in a few weeks because, like, hey, why not? It's COVID and you can get away with anything. At least that's my excuse. But whatever. No pressure. Clearly, not too many people feel under pressure right now.
You.
Okay, no worries. It's fine. The rabbi says things all the time that nobody listens to. So that's okay. Now, the reason we're motivated to change, and this conversation about change comes up, is because we go through Yom Kippur, and we talk about vidui, and we go through all the things that we did wrong, and there's an expectation, even though it's not so explicit in the actual tefillah, but we have this expectation of this thing called teshuvah, which is the formula of change, and that change comes in a few steps. And I'm just going to limit it to 3 steps, 3 classic steps, even though some think it's 4. Step number 1, we'll call vidui. That's when we, beat our breasts and we say, I did this thing wrong. Now, that's actually a big step because most of the time we say, I didn't do it wrong, or it wasn't me, and it wasn't my fault, right? You hear this all the time. It wasn't me, it wasn't my fault, I wasn't supposed to do it, it was a whole other set of circumstances that conspired against me. I couldn't do it. So vidui is the acceptance of, yes, I did do it. Number 2 is charata, that's regret. And regret is difficult because not only do you have to feel like you did something wrong, but you have to realize like what was wrong about it and process all of that. How did it affect your character? How did it affect your relationship with God? How did it distance you? How did it affect your relationship with other people? That's number 2, charata, regret. And number 3 is kabbalah lahaba. Now, kabbalah lahaba is what we refer to as change. It's the choice to figure out how to commit to do something different in the future. Now, that's not so easy. And this is where we get slipped up. This is where we get into trouble. And I want to propose something before we even get to the topic of change. The first 2 steps that I mentioned, we can do with everything. everything on the list of the al-khaitz, meaning you go through them and take your time. Take your time. The rabbi davens too fast. The rabbi doesn't give you enough time. I get it. It could be you did a lot more sinning this year than you did last year. Whatever it is, you take your time with the al-khaitz, think through what it was, what you did, think through that you did it, admit, and we don't like using the word confess. Confess implies that like God didn't know. God knows. But the issue is, do we know, right? Do we really acknowledge the fact that we made these mistakes? And so that's vido. We say we did something wrong. That we can do with 100% of the things we do wrong. Charata, which is regret, we also can really do with every single thing that we've done wrong. We could process them, we could think them through, we could figure out like what sort of separation they cause between us and God and others, etc. The third category, though, that's the area that we really need to talk about, because that's where change is involved. And I think the assumption that we can change all of those things, all the Yashamnus and all the Baganus and all the Gazalnus and all the Dibarnu Dofis and everything in the alphabet, literally, there's a reason we use the alphabet to imply that we've done everything wrong. Every letter in the alphabet we hit. We did something, but we have a problem with all those things. I think that's where we have to be very intelligent about it, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. What is the Kabbalah Lahaba? Like, what is the change?
So it's interesting that you say that, because one of the problems of the way we often do New Year's resolutions, whether they're Rosh Hashanah resolutions in our, in the religious, section of our lives, or even New Year's resolutions that we probably all do on January 1st, which only lasts until January 2nd.
I don't do anything on January 1st.
Okay, because you're so prim. But the reason why often those fail is because I think we have these large views of how we're going to change, and we're going to change in this very grandiose way, and maybe every letter we're going to hit every letter of the alphabet, when really that's just unrealistic, and change doesn't happen that way. And change really can't. The research shows that it can't happen that way. It won't happen that way. So the
third. So I propose that we can do an excellent and really wide-ranging job on vidui. I think we could do that all well. We could really think about the things that we've done wrong, and that's okay. And we're gonna, it's not okay. We hope, we wish we wouldn't have done them wrong, but we recognize them as wrongs. And then the second stage of feeling bad about that, okay, no problem. That's good. Don't feel too bad that you're not motivated to change. But the change part, which is part 3, we have to be super intelligent about, because I think most of us, and it could be I'm just speaking to me. We go through a Shana Yom Kippur, and we come up with a couple of things, and even those couple of things, they don't really pan out. They don't end up turning into something which is really I own. And I can think of a couple of really interesting examples throughout my life.
No, tell us.
I should tell you?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe later. Maybe later if there's still time. We'll talk about that. My personal changes. I know you've seen none of them, but really the thing is that I'm going to show you some sources. First, we'll go to the research. And I'm going to show you some sources which are first scary, in that the expectation is more than what I'm proposing. And then I'm going to show you some sources which I think will get us through Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and make us very different people over the course of our lifetimes if we're paying attention. So you do your stuff. So tell me, how about this? If I came to you and you were my or whatever, you were my advisor / therapist. I don't know if that's okay. You can't be my therapist, right?
No, definitely not.
Definitely not. Especially you know me too well. You don't take cases like this.
I don't think you'd pay me.
and yeah, that too. And so, what would you tell me is the methodology to actually change the things that I want to change? What am I supposed to do from a clinical sort of standpoint, from a research-based standpoint?
So, kind of just along the lines of what we were just saying, in terms of having all these things that we probably see in ourselves that we've done wrong, and all these things that we want to change about ourselves, and having these very, very large plans, and very often general plans. You kind of see almost, you talk about the end goal when you talk about change, right? I want to
be 20 pounds lighter.
Okay, I was thinking more of a
behavioral,
of a spiritual thing.
Oh.
But I want to be 20 pounds lighter. Fine, that might be a very general goal that one might have.
Me being 20 pounds lighter, I think, would be spiritual. That'd be very spiritual.
Or I want to be a kinder person, or I want to be a better davener, or I
go to
want
shul more
to.
often.
I want to
make
be a
better
runner. I want to go to shul more. Right. Those are all kind of they're specific categories, but they're still a pretty general goal within a category. And the part that we get tripped up on is kind of when we have these very general goals. What the research shows is you don't have a very specific plan to implement the goal. So you say you want to be a runner on January or on December 31st, and then January 1st rolls around and you're going to go for that run, but you haven't really decided when you're going to go for the run, what clothing you're going to wear on the run, how far you're going to run. You don't have a plan in place of how to train for the run. So January 1st comes and you have your regular schedule of the day. You wake up, you drink your coffee, you have your breakfast. I guess you don't have work that day, but maybe you have other plans. And you think like, I'm supposed to run today, but then it never really happens because every time something comes up, oh, I guess I'll save the running for later. And, then by the end of the day, you keep saving the running for later. And now it's 11 o'clock at night and you partied all night and you're exhausted and it's time for bed and there goes the running. And here we are January 1st and haven't even accomplished, day one of the goal because the goal was so general, right? But if you, instead of doing that, would say, I want to be a runner. Okay, that's the general goal. And therefore, I'm going to start a Couch to 5K training regimen tomorrow using the app on my iPhone. And I have my clothing that I'm going to run in, set out. I already bought them, or I didn't buy them, but now I'm going to buy them and I have them set out for myself for tomorrow. And I'm going to do it after I have my coffee tomorrow morning. So now you have an exact plan of how you're going to do it, what you're going to do it in, when you're going to do it, so that as soon as that coffee is finished and in the sink, it's time to run. And you know that. And if somebody calls you and tries to talk, sorry, I'm going for a run now, because that was the plan. It was a very specific plan tied to a time and a place.
So break down the categories into the specific actions that make up the category, the specific small things.
One specific small thing for starters.
So like instead of saying, I will not steal this year, right? Going back, getting more religious, right? Okay. I will not steal this year.
Well, it would probably be a positive goal. Like, I'll be more honest.
Okay. I will have more integrity this year. So instead of saying that, which is too broad in general, I should focus on like I will stop taking, no more staplers from the office.
No more sweet and lows.
No more, right. No more taking 50 pairs of chopsticks from Everfresh with your sushi. No more of that. Because I know they're free, but no, not 50, right?
So it more like when I go to Everfresh to pick up sushi, I will only take chopsticks for the people that are eating. Okay. Right? So that you will only, if there's 5 of you eating the sushi, you will only take 5 chopsticks.
Yeah, but this is not something we do, by the way. This is just I've heard this is a thing out there. I've heard complaints.
I don't even use chopsticks.
So that's number one. That's because you have such integrity. You don't want to get caught up in the issues that other people are having, or fine motor skills. Okay, so that's area one. So plan the next step as opposed to planning for what you'll be then, what you'll be tomorrow. Good.
The very specific next step that is often tied to a time and a place.
I like that.
So that the time and place element acts as cues. It's the morning. I finished my coffee. I'm in my house now. I'm going to go out for a run. It's supposed to be kind of that helps trigger what
where it's going to happen. Not only that it's going to happen, but when and how. Okay, right. Good. Like that. What else?
Now the other really important thing is that what the research shows about change is that at first, when you try to implement change in your life, it requires a pretty strong amount of self-discipline, right? If you've never ran, just to keep with our running example, if you've never ran in your life, that January 1st, that first day is going to require a lot of discipline to put on those sneakers and to get out there and try to start running. If you've never done it, that's going to require a lot of discipline. Day 2 and 3 and 4 will require a pretty nice amount of discipline as well. But with time, what the research shows is, and most important, and not importantly, but the sort of the marker is the 30-day marker. Once you've done something for 30 days and you've had that discipline and that willpower day after day for 30 days, that then you sort of take the discipline down a notch and it's becoming more of a habitual thing. So you don't need that same strong willpower every single day. It becomes more of a habit. and requires less of a self-discipline type of
Willpower.
right.
Less willpower, more habit. So yeah, so I've read a lot of it. I've actually spoken about this in shul, probably after a conversation that we've had. Take like brushing your teeth. And nobody.
Right. So Tal Ben Shachar, we've heard him speak once
Right.
about this kind of stuff. He's a psychologist. He's into positive psychology, and he speaks a lot about this. And I think he starts his speech actually by saying, "Raise your hand if you brushed your teeth today." And he asks like the crowds of 100 people to raise their hands.
First, anybody who doesn't raise their hand has to leave the audience.
Maybe he said raise your hand if you didn't brush your teeth.
Or it has to wear a mask. Right,
there were no masks. So
yeah, that was not a thing. So that's.
But his point is obviously that brushing your teeth for 99.9% of the population is a habit. It requires no willpower, right? No, besides from my 8-year-old. It doesn't require willpower to actually brush your teeth. It's just something we all feel we have to do. And we can have too many things in our lives requiring the willpower. That's the point. If you have to have so much willpower and so much self-discipline for so many things in your life, it just becomes hard.
Yeah. So habit takes out the willpower. Here's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I've talked about also in the past. I'll give you myself as an example. There was a time in my life, let's say, that I had a difficult time remembering, right, I was asking for a friend, where I had a difficult time, let's say, making brachos. I would forget, I would just drink before I make a bracha. It took me time, and it was time that I remember thinking about this, like this was my Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur project, to try to be more mindful when I put something in my mouth, make a bracha before I do. And I succeeded. I became excellent at saying words before I put something in my mouth.
Already.
I'm not calling you out. And I became excellent at that. So excellent, in fact, that I do that now mindlessly. Meaning, I was like, blah, 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 and
which may or may not be a good thing.
But so much so that I could be in the middle of a meal, where let's say, the halacha is once you wash, you don't have to make any brachos. And I'm such a tzaddik. I'm such a righteous person that I'm going to make a bracha in the middle of a meal when I don't have to make a bracha because I've turned it into a habit. I'm literally like brushing my teeth in the middle of the meal because it's so easy and obvious to me. So the problem with habit and this sort of way of change is, yes, if it's a negative behavior that we're trying to get rid of, then turning that into a habit is great. And I would love to.
Where you're saying it takes away the mindfulness of it.
Right. It takes away the mind. Once it's a habit, it's thoughtless. And if it's something which requires thought, so that's like there's a fine line.
Okay, but then the question is it? I mean, there's two questions. Number one, is it better not to do it than to do it habitually?
No, you're right.
And number two, then that's another sort of avoda is making sure that when you do it, you're really mindful about doing it.
Right. So you can spend 5 years getting good at making brachos, and then like sort of dip on the curve because now your brachos are completely mindless. But at least you're higher than you were 5 years ago. And then you start working on trying to figure out, before you drink water, you stop.
And I suspect that stopping and thinking and being mindful can also become sort of like a habit. Like,
can that?
I mean, and not habit in the sense
mindless.
So I think we're defining. You're sort of assuming that a habit is mindless. In this context, I'm not sure that that's how we're defining. It's something that we automatically do. Right.
Interesting. Okay, so that's a good.
Another example that I think about when I think about this is maybe a little extreme, but I grew up in a house where my father was crazy all year about chametz, and no benchers were fine, but anything other than a bencher in the Judaica department, like any siddur, any sefer, was not allowed to be put on a table with chametz because he wanted to make sure that on Pesach there was going to be no issue of chametz in his siddur or his farm. He didn't want to, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And he was like, we became so well trained in this that now Shmuel doesn't care so much about that, but I still have a hard time putting a siddur on a table. Like it almost bothers me. Like I can't handle it, even though
it doesn't almost bother
in the household that I live in.
Actually, completely and entirely.
But it's become so become so ingrained in me that even though it's not an objectively wrong thing to do, it's something that I have a very hard time.
But that would just mean you need the external drill sergeant to get you.
I don't know that's true because nobody's yelling at me now. Maybe
it's like Pavlovian.
It's almost Pavlovian,
right? The bell rings and you take the sperm off the table,
right,
and salivate.
But now, but I've been married a long time, And nobody's said anything to me about that in a long time, but it's still so
It's
a
ingrained.
part of me.
I see. Okay, so those are two good.
It's a shame my father didn't tell me to run every day. I would have been better off.
That is a shame. That is a shame. Yeah, no, that is a shame. Maybe it's how he said it also, which is an important thing.
Maybe, but whatever it is.
Okay, so
powerful.
that's good. So then localized small, what's next? Taking the behavior from the large to the small and figuring out what the next precise behavior is going to be. That's one way to change. The other way to change is to, I guess, like you said, to develop, turn these things to habits. And with some amount of days of regularity, I know like they talk about gratitude, like 21 days changes how you look at the world. So 30 days, let's say, whatever. Try it for 5. Trust me, 5 will be better than 0. And then you get to a point where things become easier because the free will element is taken out of it. We only have so much free will every single day. So let me get back to the Torah stuff on this, because I think this is really, really important. And this is a mistake that people make, and it's not their fault. It's the Rambam. And I'm not going to say it's the Rambam's fault, but the Rambam says pretty explicitly, when it comes to tshuva, the expectation is that God's going to be able to tell us that when we're in the same exact situation, same exact level of desire, and the same exact temptation, we are not going to do the same thing we did the first time. The Yodea Ta'alumos, the knower of secrets. God knows that we will never do this again. That's like an expectation which is almost impossible to imagine that we could really succeed at. So the Rambam sort of sets it up in a way which is very difficult. The Rambam is not the only opinion. And it could be the Rambam is talking about a tshuva, a level of tshuva, which is not what we're talking about. Like maybe that's not annual tshuva, maybe that's ultimate tshuva. But for annual tshuva, what we're supposed to be doing in regard to change in this season, it might be something more like what the Mabit says. The Mabit talks about how you could do partial tshuva. And like I said before, you could focus on the vidui, on the, yeah, I did something wrong. You could focus on the charata. Yeah, I understand why it's wrong. But when it comes to the change part, you could feel totally sorry about what you did and sort of come to terms with it on one day a year or during like one small season a year, and then get back to most of those things the very next day. Now, that's usually, some people think that's a problem. There's a Mishnah in Yuma which talks about Kol ha'omer echta v'ashuv, I will sin and I will repent in shuva so shuva. It's not shuva. If you say that I'm going to sin, but it's okay, I'm gonna say 3 whatever you're going to say, and then I'll be out. That doesn't work. Meaning, shuva is a gift, and you can't abuse the gift that we're given. But that seems to somehow the Mabit, right, understood this, and yet he says that I could do the charata and I could do vidui, and I can still go to the next day without having changed. And what I did wasn't perfect, but it was excellent. It was excellent. Just having that Yom Kippur where I felt bad and I admitted the things that I did wrong, that's good enough. What Rabbi Yisrael Salanter says, and this is really interesting, he talks about like the one thing that we choose that we find we can do, or the one thing that we have done in the past, or the one thing that like we really are motivated to change this year, like let that be our project. And so when we talk about change, the problem is, somebody just told me this metaphor this week. When a contractor is coming to a house, demolition, really easy. Like they walk out of there and they're, in 5 days, the whole thing's gone. Putting things back together, not so simple. And that's really what happens every single time we get to tshuva. It's pretty easy to wrap our heads around the wrong we did. To change all of that, I think, is understandably so difficult, in fact, that the expectation that God has of us, Rambam notwithstanding, but looking at the way many others look at this, is realistic. And therefore, that realism has to have us look internally at what are the things that we're capable of changing. So like, when it comes to, I don't know, everybody's resolutions, and top New Year's resolutions are always like weight loss and exercise and, doing my homework in a timely way if you're a student, and everybody's got the same stuff mostly going on. I'll be nicer to my spouse, or I'll be nicer to my parents. Like we kind of all have the same list of 10 to 15 things that we're working on. When it comes to, Judaism, we have a much longer list. There are lots of things that don't exist in the outside world. There's, there might be tzitzis and tefillin and davening, and there might be this davening and shachas and milcha and ma'ariv, and there might be kashrus and this type of kashrus and dairy and meat and chadash and yashan. I don't know. There's a whole litany of things that exist beyond where the average secular person is busy with, right? So we have to be all the more careful to be realistic in what it is that we're going to choose to try to create habits with, to try to create realistic tomorrow, like what the actual next step is. I've said this a million times. I'm not going to tell you the whole Torah behind it. I've shared it a million times, and I plan on sharing it a million more, but just not tonight. There is a difference between hard mitzvos and easy mitzvos, and I think and I believe very, very assiduously that there are mitzvos that each of us find difficult. They're difficult, and we all have a different list of those things. It's based on nurture and nature and our upbringing and our chinuch, our education, etc. And for us and our life experience, there might be some things which are really difficult to attack first. Whereas we also have a list of things that are not so hard. Like I said before, maybe we did them in the past. Maybe we've been successful with them before. Maybe we used to do it. We just barely remember that we did, but we know we did. And it's not breaking new ground. It's not completely revolutionary. It's not going to take a frontal lobotomy for us to change the behavior. It's just we need to sit.
Like getting in a groove.
Right. We just need to think, what are those things? What were those things that we once were or we once really wanted? What was that? Find that thing that we find easiest. And instead of telling ourselves, oh, no, it's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. I mean, you call that a commitment? You call that a commitment? Sure. I love this story. Rabbi Reisman, the guy who gives the class to 2,000 people every Saturday night.
He's still doing that?
I don't even know. I mean, COVID, you mean?
No, I don't know. I haven't heard about it in a long time.
There's no COVID in Brooklyn. But I know, I don't know if he still does it or not. I'm not really sure. But he gave this class once, and he was talking about a commitment that he made the year before, and he followed up, and I love this. He publicly said one year that his commitment was to read benching out of a bencher this coming year. That was going to be his thing. This is the great Rabbi Reisman. He's a pretty big dude, but he wanted to read benching out of a bencher. Some people do it because they don't know the words. Some people want to do it because they'll focus more.
Mindful.
Right? They'll focus more. So he says, I'm going to do it. A year later, I guess he remembered what his commitment was, which is A, very impressive. B, he actually sort of took account as to what percentage of success he had met. And he reported publicly that he succeeded, I think I don't remember exact numbers, but he succeeded 40% of the time. That's what he reported publicly.
Really?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Wow.
Reported publicly. After the class, this is what I heard him say this on tape once. After the class, a guy comes over to him and says to him, Rabbi, I can't believe it. I also made a commitment the night that you made yours. And I also kept account. And I succeeded 60% of the time. And when I succeeded 60% of the time, I thought I was a complete failure. 60? I got a 60 on the test? I mean, I wouldn't graduate with a 60 on the test. But then I hear you get 40%. Look at me. I'm amazing. I am 20% greater than Rabbi Reisman. And he said, and that was very empowering. The expectation that just because I made a commitment,
I'm impressed they were able to keep it down.
I'm impressed with that too. But that I was able to make a commitment and even keep track, like you said, and also to succeed 60% of the time. That is 60% of the time better than you were the year before. So we dismiss that because we're all into the all or nothing element. It's got to be perfect. If I'm going to get this mitzvah or this avera into my life or out of my life, it's got to be absolute. That's ridiculous.
There's also something that and I want to make sure to mention this because I think it's an important element of all this. Anyone that's ever experienced working towards something in this kind of way, whether it be, an exercise training program or a weight loss program or something that you're, checking off your list that you're doing religiously, there's a really good feeling inherent in working on that and being in the groove and being on top of that. And if nothing else, sort of that momentum that you get when you're in it, whatever it is and whatever was important to you, there is something very self-satisfying and very energizing about that. And regardless of the percentage that you end up achieving and regardless of how long it lasts, please God, it lasts for a long time, that focus is a really is just a really energizing thing to be a part of with yourself.
Success breeds success. I always thought that was what the Mishnah means when it says Avera Gereres Avera and Mitzvah Gereres Mitzvah. Mitzvah, you do one mitzvah, causes you to do another mitzvah. It's not some magic. It's just, the feel-good sensation of succeeding on day one, leads very often to a feel-good sensation. Hey, I did it once, it felt so good, and you just begin to do it again.
And honoring the commitment to yourself, is
look at me.
And it does. I remember when our oldest was in high school, I guess it was probably around Rosh Hashanah time, they had the secretary of the school speak to the girls about a commitment she had made, which in and of itself I thought was a nice thing, that you're sort of your secretary can also be an inspiration to you. And they had her talk about she's a single mom, and she made a commitment to herself, I guess it was Simchas Torah time, that she's going to listen to an entire year's worth of Kriyas HaTorah, the entire parsha every Shabbos. And I guess it was the end of her year, and she had succeeded. And she talked about like this exact thing, what an energizing, empowering, gratifying feeling it was to just have that commitment to herself and do it all year, rain or shine. And it was very inspiring, for the girls to hear. There's just the power of commitment, and the power of trying your best to honor that commitment is a really great thing. It
doesn't have to be big, and it doesn't have to be big.
It doesn't have to be that big. That was just the example.
Right. Interesting. So I guess
I haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
I'm still working on that.
You mean the Kriyas HaTorah one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe this year.
Maybe this year. I think about it every year.
Yeah.
I have to be more specific about my goal.
Well, your commitment is to think about it every year, so you've succeeded in thinking about it. So I guess if our question was, is it possible to change? I remember there was a TV show I used to like a lot, and then it stopped, called House. A crazy doctor who was rude and obnoxious, a great diagnostician, but he was very obnoxious, and he thought everybody was a liar.
Addicted to
painkillers, and great story, whatever. And spoiler alert, I don't want to tell you too much, but he had this thing he would say all the time: people don't change. People don't change. And I don't know what he means by that. I don't know what he meant to a silly TV show. Like, who cares what he meant? But people do change. They just change differently than we very often expect of ourselves. We think that we're going to change in tremendous ways, and we're going to make tremendous difference. And sometimes, people have a moment, and I don't know, cold turkey, amazing things happen. Maybe, I don't know. It doesn't really happen to me. Maybe it's happened to you. No. It doesn't happen to most people I know. Maybe it's a thing. But I think what's important to remember is that in Judaism, we have this introspective season devoted to the concept of change, of thinking about what the things are we need to change, and how we're going to go about doing that. But we have to do it intelligently. And if we're not going to do it intelligently, we're going to be here in a year from now having the same discussion, wondering if people can change, thinking, one more year of cynicism, realizing that no, they don't. And the answer is, if they're smart about it, they can. I guess that's the answer we're going to leave with.
Yeah. Yes, I think think about how you're doing it, and what the right way to do it is, and don't minimize the small changes. Don't minimize,
And that's from a secular, psychological perspective, and also from the Torah perspective. Even though there's a long list of Ashamnus, and there's an even longer list of Al-Chaitz, we can own that. We can own all of that with the Vidui. We can own all of that with the Charata, with the regret, and with the admission. But when it comes to the actual, what are we going to do about it? Pick one, and cut it in half, and then cut it in half again, and then cut it in half, and figure out how you're going to change it tomorrow. What's that going to look like?
Attach it to a time and place.
Time and place. Attach it tomorrow, turn it into a habit, so that the next year.
They have to do it tomorrow. They can wait till the first day. I'm just kidding.
No, not tomorrow, but the day after. Right. The day after, I guess, Kippur. But then again, there's no reason not to start early. Okay, everybody, we want you to get back to your Yom Tov preparation. There were not a lot of nights to be able to do this, unlike last year. Last year, where nobody had anywhere to go, there were no parties, there were no events, the life, pretty much things had stopped. That has ended, and now there are places to go and people to see and things.
But we appreciate that you still showed up on Zoom, even though all that ended.
I know, it's amazing, but it was tough to find a night to do this.
We could barely find a night. Yeah.
So on this last night of the year, to all the acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind. I don't think I know any of the other words. Everybody have a wonderful night. Shana Tova. Tikasevu, v'seichasemu. Everybody should have an incredible year, and it's great to see you all. It's great to see all your names in typeface, and we look forward to an incredible year, a year of growth, success, good fortune, health, and a return to normalcy.
Amen. And if anybody has any questions or anything to add, feel free to shout out. or not.
Yeah, they're muted, so they're not
Oh,
going to be
they're
shouting,
muted,
but they
okay.
can
They can comment.
they can comment. They can comment.
If you remember how to do that.
Yeah, as if we could ever forget. Okay, everybody, have a Shana Tova. Doesn't look like there are any comments coming in, but we will see you on Yom Tov, hopefully, and over the season, and good luck with those minuscule changes. Have an amazing night and an amazing coming year.
Take care, everyone.